So Season 3 is officially here, and with it brings the content across Warzone and Cold War. Well, Warzone kind of has a little bit of a delay here because as of the time of recording this, and by the time it goes public, that new map that is looking like it's coming isn't quite live yet. But that said, the updates that we ended up getting for both of these games were pretty big, so what all changed? Today we're going to break down absolutely everything they did, and it is a lot. So as we go along, do me a few favors if you'd be so kind. Firstly, let me know what you guys think so far of Season 3. Are you liking Cold War's content, Warzone's content? What's your favorite parts? Let me know down in the comments. As well, if you enjoy the video, you find it at all helpful or insightful, drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, do be sure that subscribe button. We are so close to 400,000 subscribers. In fact, we may hit it today, so if you guys would like to join the community, stay up to date with everything we have here in relation to Season 3 coming, and it's a lot, feel free to hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you in the community. And a few final notes. Keep your eyes peeled because there's going to be a handful of COD point codes that if you spot them and redeem them, have a battle pass on us. And the last thing, if you want to grind out Season 3, my friends over at G Fuel bumped up code Espresso to 30% off your entire order. So if you're looking for a restock, you want to try something out for the first time, whatever it may be, head on over to the link in the description below and use code Espresso at checkout. That said, let's jump into the update at hand. So Season 3, let's jump into what's new, starting with the seasonal additions here, Season 3 overall. Before we jump into any specific game content, we'll talk about that stuff that comes as a result of Season 3. Overall, we saw introduced 2 new operators, Wraith and Price, 2 new weapons overall, 3 in Cold War, of the PPSH and the Swiss K31, a new battle pass, a seasonal level refresh, and as of later today, we'll get a new event called the Hunt for Adler. Now, those 2 operators this season are Wraith and Captain Price for Black Ops Cold War, and Wraith being available for Cold War and Warzone. Wraith is your instant unlock for the battle pass with the initial buy or opt into the tiers this season, and she also has a tier 100 operator uniform with a progressive unlock for further upgrades of the skin. Price, on the other hand, it's an interesting one. Price is a free to use operator available for anyone who purchases Black Ops Cold War in Season 3, or if you already have Black Ops Cold War, he's available right up front with the initial launch of the season. So kind of like an upgrade bonus for players that may not have Cold War, that may just be free to play Warzone players or people that never upgraded from Modern Warfare. Kind of interesting to see that that was introduced in such a way and now. But those are your operators. Weaponry wise, we have 2 new weapons introduced right up front, the PPSH and the Swiss K31 for both titles. The PPSH is available at tier 15 and the Swiss K31 available at tier 31. We'll mention it in a second here with the battle pass discussion in accordance with the new seasonal content, but if you end up opting into the paid bundle, you actually do get access to the PPSH right away, given that the bundle gives you access to 20 tiers right off the bat. So not a half bad basis for it. Initial and early thoughts are the PPSH has a lot of potential, but I'd have to rank it up fully to know for sure if it's going to be the new meta in Warzone or where it stacks up in Cold War, but it's got a lot of potential for sure, and it's a fun weapon to use. The Swiss K31 felt pretty good from initial uses, but as with the PPSH, I'll need more hands-on time to accurately give a description of how I feel about it. But both of these are brand new weapons available right now in the Battle Pass and also available in Warzone and Cold War, so however you want to use them, you can. Now, talking about the Battle Pass, I opted not to do a regular showcase video here this time around and instead just put it all into one update video, but this season introduced us to a new set of 100 tiers as it always does, with a bunch of items thrown in the mix. New blueprints, new operators, of course new weapons, and a lot of other things that can be helpful but may not be terribly exciting, like your XP tokens. But it's a whole new set of 100 tiers to grind out that you can either do for free, which only offers you a select number of that total 100 tiers, but weapon tiers are free, so it's not necessary per se, or you can opt into the paid version of the Battle Pass with either the base or the tier bundle variations to start at either tier 1 or tier 20 respectively, entirely up to you. This isn't really anything new to the scene, it's been this way since December of 2019 at this point, but I wanted to take a second and showcase a few of the items in the pass. Now, here is one thing that I will say, it's entirely optional of course, but if you'd like to support the channel a little further and you're interested in picking up the Battle Pass, you can use code Espresso in the support a creator function like Divine, Andrew, Travis, and Green have while picking up this season's Battle Pass. Again, it's entirely optional, but if you do, be sure to tweet me a picture. I'd love to shout out some of your generous support in upcoming videos. But anyways, that's your Battle Pass for Season 3. Again, Season 3 specifically, we of course have that rank reset here, and with Season 2's reset and Season 1's reset, it's the same pattern. You're back down to level 1 of whatever prestige you were at the end of the season. So in my case, I hit Master Prestige. I hit 200 plus, so that means that I capped out at Prestige 11 this season. But I'll start at Prestige 11 level 1, and once I hit rank 50, that'll automatically prestige me to Prestige 12 this time. Then level 100 is 13, 150 is 14, 200 is 15, and then Prestige Master to follow at 200 plus. So whatever prestige you hit, that acts as sort of your save point, the checkpoint, and you can go from there. You don't have to start entirely all over at Prestige 1, just of the most recent prestige that you hit. So bear in mind that your rank will reset here as a result of this, that you'll have to grind out a little bit more, also coming with the reward of a new blueprint at level 50, and also new challenges to grind out if you're interested in that for Cold War MP and Warzone, as well as Black Ops Cold War Zombies. But game-specific stuff, I personally want to start out with Warzone here on this side. There will be timestamps and chapters here so that you can see just exactly what we're getting into. We can skip ahead potentially to Black Ops Cold War if you don't want to listen too much about Warzone, but it's been a big day thus far and another big day on the horizon still to go. Of course, we saw that part 1 of the nuke event here in the last 24 hours where players were overrun by zombies and the nuke was called in that we saw with the ending cutscene, thus tying off any loose ends of Verdansk, making it no longer playable, and the only modes immediately after were on Rebirth Island, set at night 15 minutes after the launch of the nuke in Verdansk. That skybox is absolutely gorgeous for one. Like, if there's anything that I think that we can probably all agree on, whether you liked the event or disliked the event, that skybox, that's beautiful. But anyways, Warzone's patch notes released earlier last night, in which it was kind of the basics. We, of course, don't see things like the new map and things listed like that, but we did actually learn a little bit about what is coming through a new ARG Easter egg hunt teaser sort of campaign that started out with some marketing from Call of Duty, then it worked its way out to the community, like what we saw with, say, Season 1's Rebirth marketing, where we had to kind of do our own sleuthing and detective work to figure out where everything was going. But when you ended up doing some of this stuff, you ended up getting images of what looks to be an 80s version of Verdansk, and what is likely going to be introduced as of later today after this entire finale of the nuke event actually comes to a close in just a few hours after this video going live. So potentially by the time you see this video, we may know for certain, we may know not, whatever it is. Just keep an eye open because there's a lot of cool stuff still coming, even if this update didn't quite bring us everything right now. But outside of the ARG and Easter egg hunts here that we had within Warzone, we actually got a lot of substantial changes from things like technical additions as well as weapon tuning, which has some proper weapon tuning this time rather than just the kind of patchwork they did over the last couple of weeks to things like the M16, the AUG, and the FFAR. But before we jump into the weapon tuning, one of the cool things that I want to talk about is the addition of DLSS for PC players. For players on PC that have an NVIDIA GeForce RTX card, they can now enable this and it will boost their performance and allow them to play at higher resolutions and graphic settings while not really sacrificing as much in terms of frame rate. This is absolutely huge and is massive for other games, but was something that didn't ever really come to Warzone, and has been rumored though to come to Warzone for quite some time. As with the season update, it should be there, you should be able to check it out, and if you're on PC, hopefully get some better performance out of it. There are some regular gameplay changes, one of those things being ground loot spawns in Verdansk that have been updated so that it's now only Black Ops Cold War weapons, but you can end up getting things like the new PPSH, like the new Swiss K31, and only legendary weapons will spawn as blueprints. So weird changes with that. A lot of bare weapons you're going to start seeing now on the ground. And also another big one is that sticking players with a Semtex will now always down them, kind of bringing it more so in line with the Thermites, whereas that was a little bit more useful than Semtexes in the past. Now they're kind of just neck and neck. There were a ton of bug fixes, but of course when it comes to weaponry, that is probably the biggest thing here out of this. Some weapon tuning and what was made here out of this. The assault rifles saw a handful of weapon adjustments, including things like the AK-47 from Cold War, the FARA-83, the FFAR, the Groza, the Krig 6, and the QBZ. But starting at the top here with that, the AK-47 from Cold War had its recoil pattern adjusted. It doesn't give many specifics here with this, but they gave a little sub note that said the recoil pattern has been a downside of the weapon since the introduction of it into Warzone. They said they smoothed out the recoil to make it easier to control, and if you're accurate, you'll end up finding this a lot more useful than it was beforehand. And that's actually pretty big because the TTK and damage profile of the Cold War AK-47 isn't half bad. That recoil was just a very big problem with it before. So this might be something that makes its way into the top 10 now in terms of weapons, but we'll see how that shakes up. The FARA-83 had a minimum damage increase from 25 to 26, a maximum damage decrease from 33 to 31, a maximum damage range increased by 17%, and the recoil pattern adjusted here with this. Kind of bring it more so in line to the more mid-range weapon here at this, but they wanted to, as they described, keep from an identity overlap between the FARA 83 and the FFAR. So this is now much more viable in terms of mid-long range for weaponry. The FFAR, as you'll see with this and also then the AUG and M16, was massacred, and I think rightly so. This had a maximum damage decrease from 30 to 27. It had a maximum damage range decrease by 15%. The neck damage multiplier was changed from 1.1 to 1. The upper torso damage multiplier changed from 1.1 to 1 also, and then it also decrease the speed slightly with the ADS. So this definitely making it less viable in terms of close quarters combat, which is where then it might fall out of the meta and usefulness for where we've seen it in the past. The Roze had a slight recoil increase and a slight ADS speed decrease along with an upper torso damage multiplier change from 1.3 to 1.11. They ended up mentioning that this was more of a precaution so that it didn't jump right into the place of the FFAR once that was taken out of the meta. Instead, this does still compete, but it isn't something that immediately replaces the FFAR for that fast-firing rifle that it packs the punch of a rifle but can act as an SMG, so allowing for a little bit more weapon diversity. The Krieg 6 they tried, it seemed to bring it more in line with a potential meta option here in which they increased the head damage multiplier from 1.4 to 1.5. They increased the neck damage multiplier from 1 to 1.3. The upper torso damage and lower torso damage was changed from 1 to 1.1, so offering a little bit more in terms of damage modifiers all around. And then finally closing out the rifle category is the QBZ-83, in which they increased the move speed, they increased the ADS move speed, they increased the neck multiplier from 1 to 1.2, and the upper torso damage multiplier was increased from 1 to 1.1. So kind of offering, again, a little bit more of a niche weapon, perhaps, in terms of the more mobile of slayers with the ARs, but that is something that was changed as well. The SMGs had a pair of adjustments in which the LC-10 had the bullet velocity increased slightly, and the MAC-10 had a max damage decrease by 1 point. This being done to try and promote a little bit more diversity in the SMG category, but then we saw the sniper rifle of the Pellington 703 actually get a decent buff in some speed attributes, but not much elsewhere. The ADS speed was increased and the raise time was increased slightly. As for the TAC rifles, again, another huge talking point here of this, the AUG or Cold War Tactical Rifle Charlie had an increased time between bursts. That burst delay increased by 33%. Also, the neck damage, that multiplier was changed from 1.8 to 1.3. So severely cutting this thing at the knees and hopefully maybe knocking this out of being the only viable weapon in terms of that Warzone meta, one of like 3 or 4 different weapons. The M16 was also adjusted as the little brother of the AUG, in which the time between bursts was increased by 10%, so not as drastic as the burst delay that was introduced with the AUG, but where it then oppositely is cut down even further is the neck damage multiplier was changed from 1.8 to 1.1. So you're really going to be getting a lot more hit markers unless you're hitting dead-on headshots. So the neck isn't as viable anymore. It doesn't extend that hitbox and extra damage as much as it used to. Now that's all for the weapon tuning that we saw here with this, but they did say they're keeping a close eye on the CR56 AMAX with a note that no king rules forever. So I'm a little sad about that one. I have loved the AMAX for ages, but truth be told, it might be time for this to see some adjustments. It has been in that top 5 meta, in my opinion, since its introduction in Season 5. So definitely going to be something that we see here probably within the season at some point, but that is some big weapon tuning that was made here at this. We also saw that attachments were absolutely changed by a ton if they are actually working as mentioned here within this. There's a lot of monotony in terms of percentages mentioned, so I'll list them all here on the screen for you guys, but we saw a bunch of attachments in the barrel category adjusted through the M16, the AUG, and even the Psychov, with the main targets being the fire rates on the tactical rifles and then the damage on the Psychov in terms of what has changed with those barrels. We saw adjustments to the lasers and magazines as well as muzzles and some optics, and the rear grips that saw increases to the ADS speed have been reduced by roughly 10%. So there seems to be a lot in terms of what could drastically shake up the meta for things that may just be minor items like attachment choices. So I'm gonna be honest with you, my man J-God, he's gonna have a field day going to town with testing all this kind of stuff. And the only other major substantial change was that there was a visibility update to Roze. I personally haven't jumped in just yet to see how much of a difference this is, but Raven claims that they have changed it. So looking forward to seeing how that all plays out in the given environment for Warzone. But those were the introductions here and changes made within Warzone on this side of the update. as of later on in the day. Again, very well could see that this new map comes out for Warzone, in which we'll have something much larger than this on the talking points, but for right now, that's the Warzone changes. Now, jumping over to Black Ops Cold War, though, being the premium title, we did get quite a lot here with this update as well to kick off the season. Firstly, the big thing I think here is maps. We ended up seeing introduced right off the bat 2 brand new maps here of Yamantau and Diesel, both of which being 6v6 maps, but also Diesel doubling as gunfight map and one for face-off as well. So 2v2 and 3v3 settings, which will definitely be interesting. If you've played the campaign, you actually may be familiar with both these levels in some sense. Yamantau is a modified variation of the level that we saw in the mission Echoes of a Cold War, and Diesel is the daytime variation of the mission Operation Chaos. If you didn't play that one, it was a side mission, so I don't blame you if you didn't go out of your way to do that, but both were seen in some kind of capacity here within Cold War already, so therefore could feel in design, in movement a little bit perhaps familiar to you. As with most things, I can't really give an accurate rating on these just yet. I'm still getting familiar with them, but both are live and I'd suggest jumping in if you're interested. Standoff is coming as of later on in the season, so that'll be another 6v6 map that we end up seeing, and potentially, I mean, if it's anything like Season 1, we may have one also not necessarily announced to us just yet coming later on in the season. Weaponry-wise, of course, we had those new weapons of the PPSH and the Swiss K31, but we also have in Black Ops Cold War specifically the ballistic knife introduced with this update. It's the first weapon that is staggered for release within Warzone. It's available immediately for unlock within Cold War in association with the launch of Sticks and Stones as a Season 3 launch mode, but the weapon isn't being ported over to Warzone until a little later on in the season, which is a first. Usually everything comes all at the same time, but that makes 3 weapons in total for Black Ops Cold War right out of the gate. The Strafe Run was also introduced as a new Scorestreak with this update, though it was actually live as of yesterday, so you may have seen it already with the update when it was first initially public, but this is available for 5,000 score and acts like previous Strafe Run streaks like the Warthog that we've seen in previous games of the franchise before. We had also a few vehicles introduced in the way of the cargo truck for multi-team or fire team, as well as Outbreak, and then additionally things like the FAV introduced into Outbreak specifically. Zombies, talking a little bit about that, had a handful of items introduced, including Duga introduced as an Outbreak zone as a new playable location, which will then come to Cold War's MP experience in the way of fire team and multi-team later on in the season. New Outbreak intel was introduced as well, which will be available to lead up to the main quest coming later in the season as detailed. So it seems like that Easter egg for Outbreak isn't quite ready just yet, needs a little bit more time to bake, but they also mentioned the future of Zombies content is right around the corner, with that perhaps pertaining to the next standalone map on the horizon. We saw there was the Toxic Growth field upgrade that was introduced in regular Zombies modes, which this summons a patch of Wild Growth, slow and deal damage to enemies. This can shut off lanes, defend objectives, and buy you some time if you need to make an escape. It can be upgraded all the way up to tier 5 as you can with other field upgrades to deal more damage, last longer, and cause enemies to explode. There's a huge quality of life change also that was added into Zombies, which I'm a huge fan of here with this, that now being the ability to progress and further unlock DLC weapons that you don't have unlocked organically within Zombies. So if you're a Zombies player primarily, you don't need to go into MP to complete and unlock weapons now after this update. You can do it right there in Zombies with specific challenges for those weapons for Zombies. Your weapons like the Groza, Mac 10, Street Sweeper, Farah 83, LC10, R1 Shadowhunter, ZRG 20mm, Sledgehammer, and so on. If you haven't unlocked those just yet, you can now with new challenges in Zombies. Dead Ops Arcade had a few adjustments and improvements this week, including an adjustment to the XP gains and the Mama Back boss fight being a little more ironed out. PlayStation players saw Onslaught bringing Yamantau to the fold and more content coming over in the season, but jumping outside of Zombies in particular, we of course saw that we had that overall rank reset, which we mentioned earlier in the video, but in Cold War we actually ended up getting more Prestige shop items like additional Prestige icons and calling cards from the original games. So if you have any leftover keys, you may find something you like here that was introduced with this season. But do note though that you can't access this until you hit level 200 again this season, so it unfortunately doesn't carry over from your progress as of last season. Another cool but smaller addition is that there's now things like the Arcade and Barracks, which allows you to play any 10 classic arcade games that you'd like. Those being Barnstorming, Boxing, Chopper Command, Enduro, Fishing Derby, Grand Prix, Kaboom, Pitfall, and Pitfall 2, as well as River Raid. This is a cool addition, I think, here. Not something that is really game-changing or anything like that, but it was cool to see these as Easter egg items within the campaign and even needing to be interacted with for Dark Ops challenges in the campaign, but now to be able to play them whenever here outside of the campaign is pretty cool if you ask me. Other small items like skin randomizers and operator randomizers and a new lobby theme for Season 3 were introduced with Cold War, but that's some of the features here up on deck. Outside of that, we saw the playlist introduced for this week are Yamantau 24/7 and Diesel Face-Off 24/7, Sticks and Stones, Nuketown 24/7, Gunfight, Snipers Only Mosh Pit, and Multi-Team Mosh Pit, but we also had a ton of technical changes, including things like notable weapon tuning and even things like movement adjustments. So talking weapon tuning a little bit here, we firstly saw that the LMG Alpha, or the Stoner 63, had a reduction in max damage from 42 to 38, a reduction in max range from 38.1 meters to 21.59 meters, a slight increase to the vertical recoil, and slight reduction in the ADS speed, as well as then finally a reduction in the range penalty of the Division barrel. So an overall nerf here to the Stoner, which definitely may shake up the Cold War meta. The RPD saw an increase in the max damage from 38 to 42, a reduction in the max range from 50.8 meters to 20.4 meters, a significant nerf on that one, a reduction in the ammo capacity from 75 to 50, and reductions of the range bonus for the match grade barrel and range penalty for the Division barrel. Closing out the LMGs in a very similar fashion, the M60 saw a reduction in the max range from 76.2 meters to 20.4 meters. Massive on that one. A reduction in the ADS speed by 13.8%, an increased probability of the horizontal view kick when hip firing, and again changes to that match grade and Division barrel in a negative fashion. All three shotguns saw some adjustments as well, in which the Street Sweeper removed the one-shot kill potential. It decreased the max damage from 138 to 88, tying back in with that removal of the one-shot kill potential. It reduced the mid-range pellet damage from 6 to 5 and reduced the damage bonus on the Task Force barrel attachment. The Howler 77 increased the max range from 5.08 meters to 5.72, a minor buff there with that one. It also reduced the range penalty on the Task Force barrel and reduced the damage bonus on the Task Force barrel as well. Then finally, the Gallo SA-12 or Shotgun Bravo saw an increase to the mid-range damage from 9.14 meters to 10.16 meters. It increased the mid-range pellet damage from 2 to 3 and reduced the max damage from 118 to 108. As for your assault rifles, the FFAR had a handful of adjustments here at this, in which it reduced the recoil penalties on the Task Force barrel by 10% total. It increased the bullets added to the 34-round magazine attachment from 34 to 38, so changing that pretty drastically. It reduced the reload speed on the 34-round mag from 10% to 5%. It increased bullets on the speed mag to match it with the now counterpart of the 38-round mag, and it reduced the ADS speed penalty on the 38-round speed mag attachment from 20 to 10%, so definitely making that a little bit more viable. The Krig 6 saw an increase to the headshot multiplier from 1.25 to 1.4, and a reduction of the max damage from 35 to 33. So you're definitely going to see that the Krig is still incredibly lethal with headshots, but elsewhere, you may take 1 or 2 shots more depending on where you hit them. Overall, for attachments on rifles, there was an added ADS move speed bonus to the Ultralight Contour, Contour M2, and CMV mil-spec barrels. In Cold War, the AUG saw a reduction in the max range from 30.48 meters to 19.05 meters. It increased the burst delay from 0.216 to 0.233. It increased the max damage from 51 to 52. It increased the headshot multiplier from 1.25 to 1.4, and reduced the range bonus on the Task Force barrel, as well as reduce the damage bonus on that barrel as well. For the submachine gun category, all weapons had their sprint speeds adjusted, in which it reduced the sprinting speed of all SMGs. Pistols are now the fastest weapons to carry while sprinting. With specific attachments though, the SMG may now allow sprinting as fast as a pistol, but no longer faster than. Then the only other things made in terms of technical changes that really are game changing is movement changes, which this was a huge nerf to slide canceling, but in the more technical ways that they put it, they refactored synchronization between first-person camera and the third-person camera animations that could cause these states to be out of sync. A player's third-person animation stance will now more accurately portray the player's first-person view, reducing advantages when quickly moving between stances, aka taking advantage of breaking cameras, which is what slide canceling did. So it's definitely a big change here to the movement, and a lot of people seem to be hit or miss with this. Some people really love this change, some people hate it. So it really just comes down to, I guess, if you were somebody that really liked slide canceling or if you didn't really mind it all that much. Outside of that, the only other things that were really introduced here as of this update with Season 3's launch is that of new shop items. Launching with the start of Season 3 here, the main featured items are the Jet Fighter Reactive, as well as the Disappearing Ink bundle. That Jet Fighter Reactive comes with the Dogfighter LC-10 blueprint, the Dive Bomber FFAR, the Slow Clap Gesture, the Locked On emblem, and the Weapons Hot Calling card for 1,600 COD points. Truth be told, this reactive is actually pretty cool if you ask me. I like the look of it here, and I like the look of the FFAR, and the nice part is that both of these weapons will have their place within Warzone, so you definitely will get some use out of them, even if you're not a Cold War player. They, of course, can do phenomenally in Cold War, but when you take a look at Warzone, some of those weapons don't really transfer one-to-one. But these ones, they can hold their own, and especially with the LC-10 getting a buff. If you like a camo and you want to use it, this might be a good time to do so. Now, that Disappearing Ink bundle comes along with a Black Ink Knife, Ballistic Knife blueprint, the Armed and Charged watch, the Ballistic Blast finishing move, the Quiet Gesture, the Bloodletter emblem, the Schematic calling card, and 2 tier skips. So if you don't want to go through the process of unlocking the weapon organically, because it is something that doesn't have attachments here with it, you can use it in its entirety, unlike other weapons that you buy blueprints for, even if you don't have that base weapon unlocked. So you can use that right up front. That comes along for 1,000 COD points. Now, you may notice some other bundles here that you did not see so far that have been introduced with Season 3, but those are likely in the operators or the blueprints sections, which are usually individualized. That's not something that is the exact same for everybody else. Like for me, I noticed the Marked for Death bundle and the Kraken Slayer bundle as well. New sets for a Park skin, a Street Sweeper blueprints, and things like your crossbow blueprint as well. You may also see a couple of free bundles here added into it, which there also is with the introduction of that new arcade system, seemingly arcade games that you can end up getting as free bundles as well. I ended up getting the skiing cartridge, so that adds to the total there as well. Now again, as we mentioned earlier in the video, if you do wish to support the channel a little further, you can use code Espresso in the in-game item shop, but it's entirely optional. And of course, if you do, tweet me a picture. But right now, that is where we're at here. That is everything that changed here, and it has been a long video. So thank you guys so much for sticking around if you made it this far. But hopefully this filled you in on everything that is new here within Season 3 and what you need to know jumping into it for the first time. So that said, that's where we're going to wrap it up. I would love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. What do you think of Season 3 so far? Do you like it? Do you like Warzone in particular? Maybe Cold War in particular? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know. But hopefully enjoy the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Warzone, Cold War, and anything Season 3 related. We have a ton of stuff up on deck that you guys will not want to miss, so stick it here on the channel if you're new. If you also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. If you guys want to strike a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.